Hey guys, Stealth here. Today looking at World of Tanks. Yeah, I don't cover this game nearly as much as I play it, but after playing this game in the Walker Bulldog yesterday night, I thought it was worth covering. If you haven't seen the Walker Bulldog yet, it's the new Tier 7 American Scout that's been introduced in the 9.3 patch. It comes off of the T-37 and it leads towards the T-49. Now I have played all of those tanks and I think that this is still definitely the best scout of that line. It's very agile, very fast, very high turn radius, both on the turret and on the hull. And the gun is the same gun as the T-71, except that this one has a bit more ammo. You have a 10 ammo clip, and you can use this to rapidly pummel away at enemies, as you will see me do in this video. Now as you can see, I'm a Tier 7 scout, and I'm in a Tier 10 or Tier 9 matchup. That means that most of these vehicles can do with shooting me in one go. One shot, one kill for them, except for some of the heavies who cannot do that. But still, I gotta be very careful with my health. If I get hit, then I'll lose at least a bit of hit points or die right away. Now, scouting in this map is pretty difficult, or at least I haven't figured it out yet. Because over here you have a couple of narrow lanes, which is not exactly where you want to be in a light scout. Because you're going to come up against a heavy or medium. Over here is the same thing, it's a very narrow street, and this is again not where you want to be. A scout, in my opinion, generally wants to be in the open. The problem is, on this map there's not a lot of open. There is this urban area or town area, or I believe it was a gulag originally. But there's not a lot of scouting opportunity, because it's difficult to see over these buildings. So this is why you see me trying to do this. Trying to get a bit more altitude to get a look over those houses, but of course that doesn't exactly work. So up to the next position, and by now I realized that in a Tier 7 scout you just have to be patient. You have to really wait for your time to strike. If you don't, and if you just go rushing off into the enemy lines, then you are 9 times out of 10 just gonna get killed. At which point you are no use to your team, you cannot help anyone, and all you've done is given the enemy another tank which they just killed. So next I try to get a couple of shots on these guys, but unfortunately this ridge is still covering them. So this was never going to work. And this building right here is now in the way, so there was no way to get a shot on those tanks. So next up I try to get up on this ridge, but I do not have enough speed. Let's make another run at that. You can see that the Bulldog accelerates pretty quickly, and if I was doing the top speed of this tank, which is about 72 kph, I might have been able to do it. Now this was an interesting moment in the game, because right here suddenly a big blob of units appeared. A couple of tank destroyers and mostly heavies. There was an E-75 here in this small ravine/ridge, and there were quite a bit of units here, including an E-100 that was spotted and a Tordos. So that means that I now know where most of the enemy tanks are, and by knowing that I can probably move up pretty safely. Now this is exactly what I meant by what I said earlier, that you have to be patient, you have to wait for your moment to strike. If I know that all of the tanks have been spotted and they're not in a position to shoot me, that means I can move up safely. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm pushing up using this small trench, if you will, as cover, so that those heavies or tank destroyers on those sides cannot spot me. And I decide to go looking for artillery, because that is always a good thing to do in a scout, if you can do it safely, that is. So, I found the artillery. Autoloader goes to work. And that's him down. So, by now I already killed a Tier 10. That was one Tier 10 autoloader artillery unit. So already I helped my team out and I did 490 damage. Now next up, let's try and get some shots in the rear on some of these other units. Question is where? I could go after this bad chat over here, but it's a pretty mobile target. The T-95 I could never penetrate at that range. But over here, they are probably heavily engaged with those STIs. and possibly the IS-8, so I might be able to sneak up from behind and get a couple of shots in their rear, which is an area that this tank can definitely penetrate on nearly all tanks. Here we go, I get the rear of a T-70, or sorry, of an E-75, and I decide to annoy this T-30 somewhat. And by doing this, by just annoying these tanks, they have to start paying attention to me. Because even though I won't outright kill them, I can be very annoying and I can start to damage modules or just give them a loss of HP. So they have to respond. I even put this T-30 on fire, but he immediately puts it out, so he has an automatic fire extinguisher. Now they pull back, at which point I think that E-75, let's see if it's actually true, yeah, the E-75 was now turning around, which means that it was now capable of getting a shot at me. So I realized this as it was doing it, and because I realized it, I was able to get the hell out of there. And I'm very happy that this bad chat was paying attention. If he wasn't, and he'd have stood there, he'd just have blocked my area. So, I outstayed my welcome in that area. Well, let's have a look at the other side. And in the meanwhile, I already did quite a bit of damage to those other vehicles. I did 490 damage to the Batchat, 166 to the T-75, and 518 to the T-30. So let's see what we can find. And I get the rear of a Batchat, just because I'm all the way behind their base. I'm intentionally not getting in their base, because that way they would know exactly where I am. And that is not something I want to give them away. So a couple of shots, and the Batchat realizes what's going on and he disappears. By now I was reading the minimap situation and I thought, well, this is not good for the E-75. He's facing a T-95, which is a difficult target to penetrate, especially or even for an E-75. And I thought that this Batchat, if I was driving a Batchat, I would go down the 8 line, come up behind and get a couple of shots in the rear of this E-75. If I wanted to save that tank and its gun, I was going to have to work quickly. So you can just see the good speed on this thing. Even if it's not exactly at full speed yet, I'm still doing 60 kph. Now in hindsight, I I could have reloaded my clip. I could have, and maybe I should have. So here we see the T-95, who is still aimed towards the E-75. As you see there on the right side, his gun is still sticking out. The Batchat's on 300 HP, which means that I can kill him with 3 shots, maybe 2 if I get a couple of high rolls on the damage. Unfortunately, I'm not in time there to save the E-75, and at this point I do something that's pretty risky. I hope that the T-95 is not yet in a position to fire at me, and that my speed of 77 to 80 knots or 80 kilometers is high enough to get me on the rear of this Batchat. Turns out it was, but you can see the T-95 aiming at me there, so it was a pretty risky move. But still, something had to be done because we were losing pretty badly. We only had a couple of TDs left, a Batchat and an artillery piece versus 3 TDs, one very good Batchat and an E-75. So here we go, putting some more shots into the Batchat. I get him. And I get the hell out of there before the T-95 comes to give me some company. Manually reload my clip, so that I have a full clip by the time I arrive to the other side of the battle, which is going to be here, where there's 2 T-30s pretty dug in, and I just managed to take out one of our last remaining tank destroyers, the T-95. Right now we still have the Tortoise to my right here, we have the Batchat to my left, but I know that one lonely Batchat like that is not going to survive, so he needs support. He manages to kill one T-30. Then I realized he's on fire, and this was really when I was starting to get worried, because I thought the guy might just burn up. That he might not have a fire extinguisher, or that he was already put on fire once and that he couldn't put it out again. So I give the Batchat opportunity to reload, which I know he was doing by now. Go around all of these corpses, and the T-30 just knows that I'm here now. I'm I'm not even going to try to get a shot on him. The Artie does. The Artie manages to take off almost 1,000 hit points. But now the situation looks like this. He has a bat shot to his front and he has an M41 to his side. So he has to pick something to defend himself against. I, by this point, had absolutely no intention of getting a shot at him. I was not going for that. Instead, I was being a distraction so that the bat shot could reload, because the bat shot does a lot more damage per shot than I do. And unfortunately I do take a hit in the process, but now the bat shot's reloaded. So now we really gang up on this guy and we get him. So how else could this have played out? If I would not have been here, I think that the T-30 would have just pushed on the bat shot and the bat shot would have died, because there is not a lot of cover they can use. All they got is this ridge here in the middle. But just by showing up, by creating a diversion, the bat shot was able to reload. The T-30 was no longer focused on any of us. He had to pick targets, and the moment he picked the bat shot, I was going to fire and vice versa. So there was not really a lot of... he didn't really have a lot of options. Now the last remaining tank is the T-95, so I start to load premium ammunition. The premium ammunition in this tank has a bit more penetration, 210 versus 175. And I will need that penetration to go through the T-95 because it's a very, very solid target, very heavily armored. Again, using the terrain as cover. Let's keep it down low. And by doing this, I'm making sure that T-95 doesn't prematurely spot me and that he cannot get the first shot off. And here we go. Because I showed up unexpectedly, and because the T-95 thought that the tortoise was much more of a threat, which he was more or less right about, because a tortoise can still do very nasty things to a T-95 and vice versa. It was just about who can get the first shot off. By doing that, he pretty much ignored my presence here. I try to get a couple of shots into his side, but I don't manage to go through it. Put him on fire. And now I have to start aiming for his engine block. Aim for this section. If you aim here, you usually won't penetrate. So be careful with that. Some more penetrations. Now I was getting a little bit nervous because I only had 2 rounds left. The Artie had died, so I could not count on Artie support. And although the bat shot was coming in, I really wanted this kill. So these last 2 shots had to be right. 1 and 2. And that is how you get 3,000 damage done in a in a tier 7 scout, the M41 Bulldog, in a tier 10 game. So I was very, very happy with the result of this game. Now let's have a look at the post-game stats. So there you have it. That's the post-game stats. I got 2359 experience for that, a mastery badge first class, very, very nice, my first in this tank. 52,000 credits, although with firing the premium ammo I did lose 16,000 credits, but for a game like this it was well worth it. I did 3,110 damage of my own, and I assisted other tanks in doing 963 damage. So I was pretty effective in this game. Now as you can see here, I did damage to the bat shot artillery, E75, both T-30s and the T-95. By doing this, I was able to really help my team get that victory, although it was still touch and go. Now again, this is not... I'm not the ideal example of a scout. There are probably people who can play this game and this scout a lot better, such as, for example, Circumflexes or Quickie Baby. Now, if you want to see some excellent gameplay, I suggest hopping over to their channels, because that's where I really learned how to play the game. But I still hope that I was able to entertain you and show you how important it is to wait for your moment to strike with this tank, how not to throw your life away, and just how annoying and effective at the same time you can be to other tanks, even though you're driving a tier 7. Pick the right angle, pick the right time to strike, and you can do a lot of damage with this tank. I hope you liked it. If you did, consider giving the video a like. If you want to see more of my videos, subscribe to my channel. And if you have a question, suggestion or comment, just leave it down below. I do enjoy hearing from you guys, so if you have something interesting to say, let me know. Thanks for watching, and see you next video.